مساء الخير واهلا بكم الى حلقه جديده من واشنطن اونلاين. معي انا هدي العويد. نبحث تفاعلات الشارع التركي مع تهديدات الرئيس التركي اردوغان بغزو الشمال السوري، لا سيما ان هذه التهديدات تاتي في وقت يعاني فيه الاقتصاد التركي من ضائقه كبيره، وفي ظل تقارير دوليه عن ان البنك المركزي التركي هو من اول البنوك في العالم التي ستعلن افلاسها في حال ازداد التضخم العالمي. نبحث هذا الملف مع ضيفتي من واشنطن السيدة ميرفي تهروغلو، وهي مديرة القسم التركي في معهد راند للدراسات السياسية من واشنطن. سيدة ميرفي، ماذا يقول الإعلام التركي؟ ماذا تقول الأوساط المقربة من النظام التركي عن التهديدات التركية للشمال السوري؟ إلى أي حد ممكن أن نقرأ من حديث الإعلام التركي مدى جدية هذه التهديدات؟
So, according to Turkish press, this is an operation that, despite many countries are opposed to it, including Syria, of course, and Russia and the United States, it very much looks like it is going to happen. All of the news outlets every single day end up reporting quotes from various Turkish government officials. Just today, there was one from the defense minister saying that the operation is being prepared for, and it should be happening very soon. So the most important takeaway is that Turkish media is very much pushing that this operation is going to happen. For the reasons for it, of course, they never call the SDF SDF. They often, particularly the news media that is close to President Erdogan, they often refer to the presence of the YPG/PKK. That's how they represent the SDF forces, or the YPG, which is the majority of the SDF forces. They constantly talk about the presence of this group there and how this poses a threat to Turkey. So that is the top number one reason as to why they say that there is going to be this operation. And the second reason, which I think is almost equally important, is to create this, they say that Turkey aims to prevent this safe zone. What that means is that Turkey's refugee population, the massive more than 5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey recently, in recent weeks, has become a major crisis in domestic politics. And we can tell that it's going to be a big issue for the upcoming election in Turkey next year. So I think part of what the government wants to achieve with this operation, as we see in the media as well, is to show the electorate that they are making some moves towards sending some of those refugees back into Syria.
ماذا تقول الأحزاب السياسية التركية المختلفة عن إمكانية شن حرب الآن في الشمال السوري، بينما هناك تقارير دولية تقول أن البنك المركزي التركي إلى جانب البنك المركزي التونسي هو أول بنك في العالم سيتعرض للإفلاس في حال ازدادت نسب التضخم؟
So it's quite difficult for Turkey's opposition parties to actually come out in opposition of any such operation. A year ago, for the first time since 2014, I believe, when Turkey first passed this law in parliament, which allowed for operations, cross-border operations, to take place in Iraq and Syria. At the time, it was presented as a measure against ISIS and other terrorist groups, which means the YPG, of course, in Turkey. All the opposition parties, except for the HDP, but all the major opposition parties had supported it. And every year since then, every 2 years, when they have brought this law back into the parliament to renew this authorization, the parties have all supported it, with the exception of the HDP. That changed just about 2 years ago, when for the first time Turkey's main opposition party actually opposed it. I think this was because of the final, territorial defeat of ISIS became clear. The fact that these operations were only against, Kurdish majority regions, that became clear. But also, I think most importantly, I think the main opposition saw that the government often launches these operations ahead of critical elections in Turkey, or ahead of important domestic events, in order to boost its own popularity. So it's mainly a political ploy by the government every time we see talk of such operations or such operations happening. So we did see the main opposition party, the CHP, oppose this move about 2 years ago. But currently it seems that most of the opposition parties, again with the exception of the Kurdish majority HDP, supporting it, if not, or mainly just ignoring the topic of this operation. And that is because they also see that the government often uses these operations to pit various elements of the Turkish opposition parties against one another. They want to show discord among the opposition. They want to make it seem like some of them, the more nationalist ones, support it. Those who do not support it are not so nationalist and they're not worthy of being, in the Turkish parliament, etc. So often, whenever the government brings up these operations, it is a way to both boost up nationalist fervor in Turkey, which will end up being in support for the government, but also to pit the opposition against one another. So that makes it very hard for Turkey's opposition parties to come out and strongly oppose such operations, with the exception of HDP.
ما مدى اتساع رقعة الحرب التي ممكن أن تقوم بها تركيا في ظل الأوضاع الحالية، ليس فقط الاقتصادية ولكن أيضا في ظل وضع الميليشيات المدعومة تركيا في الشمال السوري؟ يعني قبل شهر تقريبا تدخلت تركيا لفك الاشتباكات الداخلية بين الميليشيات المدعومة تركيا في شرق سوريا في رأس العين. هناك حاجة، إذا كانت تركيا تتحدث عن عملية في منبج، هناك حاجة كبيرة لأن يكون هناك قوات برية، لأن يكون هناك تكاليف باهظة لمثل هذه العملية. ما حجم القدرات التركية للقيام بمثل هذا التحرك الآن؟
So there have been, as you mentioned, actually attacks coming from Turkey into other parts of Syria for a very long time now, for the last few months. It's just that they're not really being covered in the mainstream media because of much bigger stories that are taking over, such as the war in Ukraine and many other activities that Turkey is involved in. But Turkey has been engaged steadily in increasing its attacks into Syrian territory in recent months, actually. This particular ground operation, for reasons that you mentioned, involving the state of the Syrian militias that Turkey is using for these kinds of operations, is going to be quite difficult. I think the fact that there are internal discord among the Syrian militias that Turkey uses. I think it's one of the reasons why Turkey wants to have this operation also. At this point, Turkey is locked into this very difficult relationship with these groups that Turkey has been pretty much feeding and relying on for its operations in Syria for so many years, that at this point they have become sort of like a proxy force for Turkey, and Turkey needs to come up with activities for them. It needs to keep them busy. It was sending some of these militias into Libya previously. We have seen, reports of Turkey potentially sending these militias elsewhere to other conflicts outside, because they need to find a pastime, an activity for these militias which really need to fight. And I think this operation will also help Turkey accomplish that goal. But another major reason for, why this operation will be problematic for Turkey, of course, is that, none of the major other governmental actors involved in this crisis, whether it's the Syrian government, the Iranian government, the Russian government, or the US government, have so far given the green light to Turkey for such an operation, or even indicated that they would be turning a blind eye to it. So I think that, and in particular, not having the green light from Russia, is the number one obstacle that facing this Turkish operation right now.
ماذا تتوقعين من الموقف الروسي ميرفي؟ يعني في ظل اليوم وجود حتى الآن على الأقل حديث روسي عن رفض تقدم تركيا في الشمال السوري، ولكن أيضا من ناحية أخرى هناك رغبة في تحسين العلاقة مع تركيا. أي موقف ستأخذ روسيا برأيك؟
So that's an interesting question. Tomorrow, of course, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov is going to be in Turkey. And I think one of the number one agenda items between Turkey and Russia in those meetings is going to be Turkey asking for a green light for this operation. I'm not sure what they are going to be proposing Russia in exchange for this green light, but I think definitely the Turkish side is going to be pushing the Russians to get this concession out of them. I don't think Russia wants to give the green light, but I also think that it is pretty much overextended given the war in Ukraine, and may allow, may turn a blind eye to this operation. It will, of course, Russia will have to negotiate this with Syria and also Iran. But at the end of the day, Turkey and Russia have cut so many deals between themselves. And in situations like this, I think, there is a probability, and this is very, very important for Erdogan to carry out the operation. He really wants to do it. He seems dead set on doing it, again, because of these elections that he's facing just next year. And according to every single opinion poll, he is going to lose these elections unless he has this operation. That could really help boost his popularity at home. And so Erdogan really needs this. I think they're going to make a strong case to the Russian side why this is so important. And Russia may, in fact, allow it. And as you mentioned, because of the October 2019 deal, Russia is pretty much the top country, the only country that Turkey needs a green light from in order to be able to carry out this operation.
أي موقف نتوقع من إدارة الرئيس جو بايدن، وهو الذي كان ناقد بحدة لموقف دونالد ترامب السلبي من الغزو التركي في الشمال السوري في شرق الفرات عام 2019؟ هل ظروف بايدن أيضا تسمح بالتحرك ووقف هذه العملية، أم أن واشنطن أيضا ستتفرج وستقول نحن لسنا في منبج، لسنا في تلك المناطق، وبالتالي ليس بإمكاننا فعل الكثير؟
So there's going to be strong criticism coming out of the U.S. for sure. Already, the State Department has made several statements. Secretary Blinken has come out warning Turkey that this would be problematic. The State Department spokesperson Ned Price has came out with a statement warning Turkey. If there is such an operation, and I think it's quite likely that there will be one in the coming days or weeks, I think we are going to see some statements coming out of the U.S. Criticizing it from the Biden administration. Certainly, there will be condemnation and criticism coming out of Congress, which also passed a pretty strong resolution after the 2019 operation that Turkey undertook. So several members of Congress, I expect, will be making comments, remarks about this. That said, I don't know if there is more that the United States will do other than condemnatory and critical statements at this point. Their focus to me seems to be elsewhere and not very much in Syria. This administration in particular has not really had a coherent strategy or policy towards Syria so far. So as much as they make these statements now warning Turkey, I think what it end up will causing is that it will further boost the image of Turkey as an incredibly problematic ally in the eyes of the U.S. Administration and Congress. But beyond that, I'm not sure if there will be any strong repercussions that the U.S. could inflict on Turkey as a result of this operation.
ميرفي، بالنظر إلى السياسات الداخلية التركية وإلى الداخل التركي، هل يأتي يوم نرى فيه الحكومة التركية الحالية أو أي حكومة أخرى مستقبلية تتعايش مع هذا الواقع الجديد على حدودها الجنوبية، واقع وجود الإدارة الذاتية وقوات سوريا الديمقراطية؟
So the political mood in Turkey is such that right now I don't see, either this government or even if there is an opposition in power next year, I don't really see a, positive attitude or a serious change in attitude of the Turkish government towards the SDF. I think that is unfortunate though, and I do hope that in the longer term there can be a better solution because, the SDF is quite different than the PKK in many ways, unlike what Turkish media says. I think it's really important that the SDF has a strong relationship with the United States and other NATO allies of Turkey. This could really be to the advantage of Turkey if Turkey is a strong, NATO ally, and it, I think it can really take advantage of this relationship between NATO and the SDF in order to push for further peace talks with the PKK and to once and for all finally resolve its Kurdish problem, get past its conflict with the PKK, which will help the prosperity of not just Kurdish citizens in Turkey, which is very, very important for Turkey's political stability, but also for Turkey's democratization and goals for being a democratic pro-human rights country in the future. So I think it's a shame that there can't really be a modus vivendi in the short term, at least, as I look at it. Between Turkey and the SDF, but perhaps in the long term there can be a solution whereby they do live together.
نعم صحيح، خاصة أن الرئيس أردوغان هو من بدأ عهده السياسي بمحادثات سلام مع حزب العمال الكردستاني. هل ممكن أن نرى هذا السيناريو يحدث مرة أخرى؟ وهل ممكن أن تلعب واشنطن دور في كوساطة في محادثات سلام بين حزب العمال الكردستاني وتركيا؟
The U.S., the U.S. really should be mediating for this. It should be pushing for this. And I think they are always reminding their Turkish counterparts how important this would be for Turkey to get back to the negotiating table with the PKK. I think the problem with Erdogan is that he wasn't quite sincere when he undertook these negotiations with the PKK. I think he did them in order to be able to get a major boost from the Kurdish voters in Turkey towards himself. But what the peace talks ended up doing was to, help boost and create the HDP, a civilian political party that truly represents the interests of the Kurdish citizens of Turkey. And of course, the majority of Kurdish citizens flocked to that party instead of to Erdogan. So Erdogan saw this as, far from the Kurds rewarding me for undertaking this effort, they have betrayed me by going to this opposition party that very much wants to bring me down from power. I think this is how he sees it, because he's a cynical political leader. And as a cynical political leader who cares only about perpetuating his own power, I don't think he's going to be interested in going back to the negotiating table again. Although what I will say is that another Turkish government in the medium to long term, given how weakened the PKK has weakened it has been now since 2015 with the now 7 years of war with the Turkish army, it has been much weakened compared to 2015. I think given the state, some other Turkish government in the future may hopefully be able to consider going back to the negotiations with the PKK and finally resolve this conflict after 40 years.
نعم، شكرا جزيلا لك السيدة ميرفي طاهروغلو، رئيسة القسم التركي في معهد راند للدراسات السياسية.
Thank you for having me.
وفي الختام شكرا لكل متابعي واشنطن أونلاين ونورث بريس. ألقاكم في حلقة جديدة الأسبوع المقبل. إلى اللقاء.